This is the third session of the Progressive Voice Seminar. The first session has been devoted to how do you make sound efficiently and well. The second one has to do with how do you enhance that sound. And the third one has to do with taking that nice sound and extending it in a variety of directions, both higher, lower in some cases, louder, then softer. And so gaining nuance with the skills that you have. That's always a difficult task to talk about this last element because it requires some integration of the skills that you've developed in the first seminar and in the second seminar. And so I've got two different tracks running in my head, and I'm hoping that I can keep them straight. One of them you'll see on the sheet of paper. I'm going to use that one as the fallback place, as the place that we'll go after I've done the stuff that I'm thinking that is more direct. How many of you, by a show of hands, have challenges making your range go higher? Oh, probably 2/3 of you. How many of you have need to learn how to make your range go lower? A couple of you say that, maybe a little bit. How many of you need to work on projection or power in your voice? Get more strength and power. Sing louder. How many of you need to learn how to sing softer? A few. Okay, mostly I'm thinking what you need is variety, because if you sing perpetually loud or perpetually soft, then it can be tedious. If you have a variety of dynamics to play in, it can present some variety and can be very nice. In addition to that, as you start playing the game between singing very loud and very soft, and all of the gradations in between, you'll discover that it isn't just a question of loudness and softness, but it's a change in quality of voice. That the quality of voice when you're singing loud is one thing, and when you sing soft, it's another thing. Almost like an artist who paints with solid colors and pastel colors. And as you move through the gradations of loud, which would be equivalent to painting with solid, vibrant colors, into the quieter, more pastel colors, you can find a quality that would fit almost every single singing call that you'd ever want to find. You can find a singing call that is happy, lively, nostalgic, tender, upset, dominant, grand. All of those things have to be projected. And the music sort of sets a tone. And if you have the ability to get a variety of different qualities in your voice, that will just enhance your ability to reach your dancers. Not just reach them with information, but reach them on an emotional level. So that holds out some promise. And all of that grows out of the paradigm of going from loud to soft and soft to loud. So the first thing that I'd like to do is to work on the high to low. And I'll get you up out of your seats, if you will, please, and we'll come on up and form a semicircle. While you're doing that, just let me remind you that in the sessions that I've had up until this point, I have not had roles. And they gave me the roles today. So if you were present for either the first or the second seminars and have not had a chance to sign up for those, the roles are sitting right up here at the front, and I'll ask you to do so before you leave today. I'll also bring those up to lunch today. Oh, these are, if you go through the 3 sessions, you get a certificate of completion, and this is just the record of completion. So right off the bat, let's get your posture where it should be. It's good enough so that you haven't fallen over this morning, and I congratulate you on that. But it is still early. But what you want to try to do, we're going to review some of the principles from the first seminar. You want to try to find your posture where your head is sitting gravitationally over your shoulders over your hips over your knees, and your knees over your ankles, and your ankles over the floor, so that you're balanced gravitationally. You'll do that by rolling forward onto the balls of your feet until you about tip over and back on your heels, and back and forth like a pendulum until you find that center of gravitational balance where you don't feel like you have to be holding yourself in an inappropriate place. The next thing that you want to try to do is to imagine the series of circles that exist in your body. The first circle is the circle of your pelvis. And if you've seen a skeletal pattern of the pelvis, you'll know that it actually forms like an oval. And so you find that oval. The next oval in your body is the bottom of your rib cage, the open bottom of your rib cage. And what you want to try to do is to adjust your body so that the oval of your hips and the oval of the bottom of your rib cage are one right on top of the other. The next one is the oval at the top of your rib cage. And you try to set that gravitationally right on top of the one just below it. The last one is the occipital bone, the base of your skull. It forms a kind of a nifty little oval as well. It sits at right angles, but it still sits on top of those ovals. And so you try to get those so that the occipital bone, the base of your skull, is sitting right over the top of the circle of your top of your rib cage. That goes to here, to the bottom of the rib cage, to the pelvis. Try to find those things if you can. The proof of the pudding comes when you go to inhale. If you'll inhale through your nostrils, if you're in the right kind of posture, you'll feel a stretch all the way around your body. It'll stretch here in the front. It'll expand a little in the front. You'll feel the ligamental stretch along the rib cage, and you'll feel that stretch going all the way into the lower back. If your posture is not right and you take that kind of inhalation, it will just go out in front of you. And when that happens, it's not like you don't have any air, but it's not as useful to you as when you're sitting right on top of that column of air. So as you're doing that, just get that sense of yourselves. Let's get your sense of rhythm, breathing. Inhale. And you'll notice that there's a little moment, and then the exhalation starts. And that hits a stasis point, and then the inhalation starts again. And so you just find this pattern, and you can use that. Use your hand as I showed you in the basics the other day. As you inhale, your hand goes inward, outward from your body and upward. It hits the top of the oval and starts its descent, and the exhalation happens. Down to your pubic bone, then the places that you need to be aware of, things you need to be aware of, is that your hand should never stop. Meaning that your breathing should never stop. It's just a cyclical, natural motion. That's right. And it's very interesting. Sometimes when you get this task going, your body will tell you things about yourself. Your hand is supposed to be reflecting your breathing, and all of a sudden you get busy thinking, and your hand stops in the process, and you make the discovery that you've stopped your breathing for a brief period of time, and all of a sudden it becomes more complex to sing. So this little outward activity, apart from being very Zen-like, very natural, is a sense of helping you find the rhythm. The next thing I want you to do as you inhale, you'll find that apex with your breath is right at its fullest before the descent. The next time you come up, hum. This is a way of finding the natural rhythm of your body. Good. That place, right at the apex of your breath, is the greatest place to find the connection between your vocal folds and your breath delivery, because you're at the most efficient. And what unfortunately many people do is that they'll take a full breath and then watch my hand. Ha! They'll give a thrust of their breath to get the breath started, to get the voice started. But what it does is set up an antagonism that really gets your body fighting against itself. That serves as a reminder for you. The next thing that you want to do is to coax your vocal folds into a passive, relaxed position. I showed you the other day that if you create a little fricative W, a little small opening, a very tight pucker, and then sing or make sounds, a humming sound through that it will set up a place where your vocal folds can be quite relaxed. Now, I'm not going to do that again today. Instead, I'm going to suggest to you that some of the tensions that come from singing have to do with muscles that are in your throat and in your jaw, tongue, and so forth, and that those muscles predominantly have to do with chewing and swallowing. And when you chew and swallow, those muscles are at their happiest. And when you sing, that process gets slowed down and sometimes can be stiff and rigid. So if you want to find a nice, easy way to make your voice vibrate, you can do this breathing thing with me, and then as you start the sound, just do this. It's the chewing and swallowing muscles, and you're just keeping them active in the tasks that they normally do. And when they isolate themselves away from the singing process, they just do their thing, they're in motion, you'll discover that your voice is far more flexible than you thought it was. And that some of the inflexibility that may come from your in your voice stem from rigidities in your jaw, in your tongue, the swallowing muscles, and if you give them something busy to do and distract them, you'll discover that your voice is quite free. Let's try it. You just think what's going on in the next room, they're going, Okay, now go higher in the pitch. And as you go higher, keep stretching. Now along the way, did some of you feel your voices want to catch? You'd start it and it'd get that old sense of stiffness to it. Anybody have that trouble? Well, then I won't worry your heads about it. But if that happens, it's just that something has turned stiff of a sudden. Either your breath or the muscles in your throat or the muscles in your jaw and in your tongue. They get stiff. And if you're accustomed to carrying a certain amount of stiffness with you, that's your natural state of being. And so you almost have to catch yourself in surprise to uncover those little pockets of rigidity. That little chewing activity is one of the ways that you can do that. You can, I'm going to take You Are My Sunshine. I've been thinking of that because we're going to talk about harmonization later. But if you're having trouble getting your voice to be relaxed, you can just simply go yum 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 yum. And as you do so, you discover that your voice just kind of flows easily out of you. And the principle behind that is that you distract the muscles that otherwise would get rigid by giving them something to do. Then having sensed that sensation, you go about putting the words to it and trying to imitate that which you've done. The greatest way to learn anything is to imitate. And unfortunately, if you don't have somebody else to imitate, you imitate yourself. You set up a condition where you're optimum, and then you try to imitate that condition in another circumstance. It's a very stair-stepping kind of way to learn new skills. Okay, so now the game that's at hand is high-low. We're going to play high-low. And the voice quality, there are some muscles embedded in your vocal folds that change the shape of your vocal folds from being quite short and quite thick to quite long and quite slender. The one set of muscles embedded inside thicken and shorten, and then there's another set of muscles that through some mechanics stretch the voice long. The vocal folds have on the inside edges of them a ligament, and a ligament is just like a rubber band. It's a kind of flesh that when acted upon will stretch. When the outside pressure is removed, it returns to its normal place, but it's a stretchy substance. It's the kind of thing that bind the joints of our body together, but it's also found on the inside edge of your vocal folds. It's like a rubber band on the inside edges of your vocal folds. And so when you're trying to go higher in pitch, you have to find a means of stretching that ligament a longer direction and make it longer. And when it gets longer, the vocal folds thin out. When they thin out, the pitch rises. So in the very most simple mechanics, that's the thing that we've got to learn how to do. Now, some folks do that one way and some do it another. I'm going to talk about the other way, the way that I don't think is so efficient. Some people will get kind of stiff in their vocal folds and not allow them to stretch from front to back very much. They sort of get fixed in place. And they know that the pitch is supposed to go up, and so what they do is that they increase the amount of pressure from beneath. They compress their breath and drive their breath a lot. And so what ends up happening is that the vocal folds from point A to point B don't get longer, but the pressure from beneath starts to bow the vocal folds. And in the bowing, the pitch goes up. Of course, you can only get it to go up as long as that pressure is there, and it gets to be a little bit erratic because if one day you're feeling particularly energetic, you'll overshoot your mark, and in another day, you're feeling not so energetic and you'll sing flat to pitch. So there are some dilemmas, but there are lots and lots of people who change pitch using that method. And the scientists that I've read about say that you can change pitch fairly significantly. You can increase the length of the vocal folds fairly significantly by doing that. It just carries some negative liabilities. The other alternative is that you have the muscles that are involved with the stretch of the ligament that just stretch that thing long. And they do so by doing some interactivity between several of the cartilages in the larynx, but basically it just goes long. Now those muscles, for most people, are not as strong as they ought to be. And they're particularly not very strong for people who speak North American English. For some other languages where there's a greater degree of inflection, there doesn't seem to be that same problem. But the patterns of our normal speech seem to induce not very much strength in those muscles. And so those muscles have to be taught what to do. Here's how you do it. Here's one of the ways you can do that. You form that little fricative W, the little puckered place, and as you start going up the scale, you insist that your breath pressure not increase. Now, for those of you that are used to using breath pressure, subglottic pressure, to get the pitch to rise, you'll feel really hamstrung. You'll say, I got a pitch to rise. My normal pattern is to drive it. I'm not allowed to drive it. How do I make the pitch go up? Well, you just don't change your breath pressure. And you say, okay, body, I want that pitch. And the other alternative is that muscle will stretch. And so early on, the muscles that are supposed to do it will be out playing cards and having coffee. And the signal will come from the brain, hey, you guys, we got a pitch that's got to go up. And they'll say, yeah, right, boss, but I thought those guys were doing it. I thought that was breath pressure. Oh, you want us to do it? Okay, guys, we got a job to do. Give us a few minutes. We'll figure it out. And lo and behold, you'll get the solution. Of course, the call will have to keep going to those guys for quite a while saying, why aren't you doing your job? Well, I guess we haven't gotten used to the idea. And then the next thing we'll say, we need more staff. We don't have enough workers to get this job done. We're not strong enough to do the job. Say what?
Union rules.
It sounds a little bit that way, doesn't it? Okay, so anyways, that's what we're going to play. So I'm going to demonstrate what I want you to do. I want you to go just that far. Only what I want you to do is to concentrate right here at the bottom of your ribs. You can actually put your fingers on the region of the bottom of your ribs. It's kind of right. They go like that, and you can find them. They may be buried under several layers of flesh and fat, but they're there if you look for them. Yeah, they are there. So the idea is that you don't want those things. You can see it on me. You don't want that to happen. You don't want the contraction like that. You don't want that kind of thing. You just want to, once you're there, that's all you got. Whatever energy you start with, you finish with. So here you go. Just right up to here and no more. Not all the way up, just. Now characterize for yourself the sensations that go along with the bottom vibration and the intermediate vibration. And you'll feel sensations in your body migrate. They'll start and they'll vibrate low and they'll just kind of migrate up. Watch and see if that doesn't happen. Okay, now let me show you where I want you to go. Just that far. As much as you're trying, I can see out of the corner of my eye, body's going, and they contract because that's the natural pattern. Don't do that pattern. Just say, you win the game if you don't do that and you splat the note all over the wall. You lose the game if you get the pitch and you contract. Just change the rules of the game.
Take the breath first and then the sound?
Yes. Here, feel on me. First the inhalation.
Okay, so you take the breath.
And then you take that suspended place and you just don't depart from it.
Okay.
You don't let your ribs contract inwards. Here you go. Good. Now we're going here. Same pressure. Go. Now, here's the new pitch. Go. Don't contract. Everybody having a good time so far? Actually, some of you at this point may say, yeah, but there's something going on right in here, right in my larynx. It feels like it's squeezing. It feels like I'm pinching somehow. Anybody feel that? A little bit? Yeah, right in there. And it's right in this region. Well, guess what? That's where those muscles are that are a little lazy. And yeah, that kind of discomfort in this particular instance may be good news. Because whenever you make a muscle work more than it's used to working, it will draw attention to itself. And when it draws attention to itself, you think, oh, I've done something wrong. In this case, it may not be so. There are some other sensations that can come there that are not so good. But this particular one, as if it's related to the ups and downs in your voice, you may be just right on track. Another thing, let me tell you, and that is, as you do this thing, you don't want to do it for 3 hours in a row. Because these guys won't want to work the next day. They're going to have to go into calling sick leave and just not be there. And so you just work them a little bit. Another again. You work them just a little bit, you let them rest. You work them a little bit, you let them rest. You work them a little bit, 4 or 5 times a day, 3 or 4 minutes apiece. And over a period of time, they'll come along and develop faster that way than if you were to just work the daylights out of them today and then tomorrow you're non-functional. Okay, so what's really going on there? You had a question or a comment.
If you call a 2-hour dance, how many hours of practice should you allow yourself? I mean, no more than like 10 or 15 minutes before 2 hours?
Well, I think that the body is a remarkably resilient kind of thing, and particularly these kinds of muscles and these kind of tasks. We're not putting very much weight upon the voice, and so you could probably all day long, if you were to do it in 5 or 10 minute increments, be doing that kind of a task. And the way you can tell when you've gone too far is that the next time you go to do it, your body's unresponsive. But if you do it and you can feel sort of worn out a little bit in that region, and then you leave it alone for a couple of hours and you come back and your body's fresh and it'll work for 10 or 15 minutes and then it's weary, and 2 hours later it's fresh and it's weary, then you're working it out at about the right rate. If you work it out until it's tired and the next time you come it's more tired and the next day it's more tired, then you're doing too much and you cut yourself back a little bit. Just stay in balance, just sort of pushing the frontiers. But the freshness, the resiliency of your body is the signal as to whether or not you're working it too hard. If tomorrow it takes longer to get your voice warmed up and you're more exhausted and less responsive, then your regimen's too aggressive and you need to just be more gentle.
What you're saying then is this should be a daily activity rather than just because you have a dance to call tonight, work your body up to where no matter when you call the dance, your body's ready for whatever you're putting on.
Yeah, I'd have to say, to add to what you said, this isn't a daily activity. This is a 5 or 6 time a day activity. And it's the kind of thing that you can do incidental to other stuff that you're doing. You can do this in the shower. You can do this while you're driving the car. You can do it while you're mowing the lawn. You don't have to hear yourself particularly. It's just changing pitch. And if you're not adept at changing pitch in this fashion, then literally you can't do it too much. You know what I mean. Within reason, you wear yourself out. But multiple repetitions is how you build strength. And you're not really trying to build big biceps in these muscles. You're just trying to get them to have tensile strength, stamina, so that they can call a whole dance. And in the course of a dance, there may be 2 or 3 singing calls that put you in jeopardy. So the rest of the night, you're kind of coasting along in a range that you feel pretty good about. And then every once in a while, 2, 3, 4 times through the course of the evening, you test your limits and you go a little higher than you would normally allow yourself to go. And you cut yourself some slack, saying, I can't, I didn't get it today. I went up for that note and I lost it. That doesn't mean I'm a loser. It just means that I didn't succeed that time. If a basketball player, every time he shot a free throw, quit every time he missed one, there wouldn't be very many basketball players left. There's just a question of getting more and more and more predictable. And the more predictable, more trustworthy your body is, the happier you'll be, the more confidence you'll have. So anyway, the range up and down is the real issue. Now, as you went up into that higher range, the sensations changed, didn't they? Try this. I'm going to ask you to go. That's 2 octaves. That's more than you'll ever use, and some of you may not make it all the way, but just see what you get. Go. Now, in your own minds, describe, what did the sound on the top of my voice feel like? What did that pitch feel like? Simultaneously, or right after that, what did the beginning pitch feel like? I'll offer some help while you're thinking it through yourselves.
You did notice that from the top, first time now, it jumped down. It jumped?
It jumped, or what I call, it yodeled over. There's a registrational. It's kind of like your body has several gears in it. There is a low mechanism that has a lot of torque and a lot of power to it. It rumbles down in the chest. Then there's a high that's sort of like overdrive, where it doesn't have very much torque to it, but it's got a lot of easy upper speed, kind of like a 5th gear on an automobile. And then there's this middle gear, and that's that middle gear where it takes characteristics of both the heavy and the light and mixes them together, and that's the place where most singing is done. And when it's done in that kind of intermingled space, you just kind of go along at will. And that's the place that I'd like to help you to find. We'll do that in just a second. When you change gears, you can either change gears like an automatic transmission where the transition is smooth, or you can pop the clutch and go, whoop, and it jumps to another place. So you come in, yeah, and what happens is that the muscles that are controlling that upper place have sort of locked themselves, and instead of remaining flexible and transferring power, they isolate themselves. Incidentally, that, if you want to learn how to yodel, that's how you do it. You take those separate registers, and instead of blending them together, like I'm showing you to do, you isolate them. And then once they're isolated, you play the characteristics. Now, why would you want to have a smooth scale to blend them together? For the very purpose that it sounds uniform from the bottom of your voice clear to the top of your voice. But on some occasions, you don't want them to sound uniform. You want to play the differences between those registers. And that little falsetto register and the heavy mechanism, you flip back and forth between them, and it becomes kind of cool, and it becomes almost, sometimes it's humorous, sometimes it's just really impressive, depending on how skillful the person is with it. There was a question or comment over here.
Just say, she's a little old lady too, and then do what you're talking about.
Yeah, and you just change the pitch. And you flip it in instead of unifying it. But right now we're talking about unification. Okay, so I want you all to say shaw. Shaw. And identify for yourself where the vibration centers of your voice are. Do it again. Shaw. They rumble in the lower part of the throat, down into the trachea. That's known as chest voice. It isn't that the voice is produced in the chest. It's all in the vocal folds. But when you get your vocal folds in a nice, thick environment, the vibration patterns on the vocal fold induce some sensations down into the trachea and into the chest that are very sympathetic, and that's why it carries the nickname chest voice. And you just felt it. It's powerful. It's rich in harmonics. It's got a lot of strength to it, just like a fundamental gear in a car would have. Now go up a half octave and go and do that same thing. Shaw. Identify for yourself. You do it again. Where are the centers of vibration? Shaw. They still have some of the same characteristics of the low, as a matter of fact, quite a bit. But they're starting to pick up some vibrations that are a little bit more in the region of your mouth. Am I right about that? Can you sense that? That's beginning to be a mixed register. So it's taking on mostly the characteristics of the chest or the heavy voice, with some characteristics of the lighter or head voice. And so you get a kind of an intermingling. It's no longer pure chest voice. It's now a mixed voice, a mixed register. And that's worth knowing about. Now go up another half octave, up in this region. shaw, shaw. Now, where are the vibrations as you're going along? They just migrate upwards a little bit, more toward moving up from the mouth, up into the upper part of the head a little bit, but there's still some connection down into the chest part, isn't there? Try it one more time. Shaw. That's very good. Now, what you've just done is covered about 2/3 or 3/4 of the total singing range that you have to deal with those 3 adjustments. The top one, for men, is the scariest one because it brings out the feminine side to yourself a little bit more. And that's that head voice. And it goes like this. Shaw, shaw, shaw. Just join me. Shaw, shaw. Yours won't go there, will it? It sort of freezes off, doesn't it?
I'm picturing singing really quietly will help. Like,
that's it. That's true. One of the characteristics of the high voice is it's also known as the light voice. The heavy voice, the chest voice, is nicknamed as the heavy voice or the heavy mechanism because it feels bigger and heavier. So that's a good observation. Go again. Shaw! Shaw! Good. So this goes along with several ways that we use our voices when we speak, when we're talking in secretive tones, or when we are intimate with each other in our conversation. We normally use this voice. And if I'm talking to a crowd of individuals without the benefit of a microphone, did you hear what my voice did? It elevated its pitch, and it elevated its pattern from here to here, and that's that mixed voice. And now if I'm really wanting to get the attention of a larger crowd, do you hear what my voice is doing? It's elevating again, and quite spontaneously has moved into that upper mixed voice, and that has a lot of command. It's still got power, but it's starting to vibrate in a higher location, and you can sympathize with that. You can sense where my voice is going as I do that. That we do every day without really ever stopping to think about it. When we get excited, we start talking in this upper mixed voice. And when we get exasperated, we go in this voice. And we get really excited, like, anybody watch? No, you were all dancing. Anybody watch this stupid bastard? Well, you know, yeah. No, I was actually kind of happy with how it came out. But you know what I mean? When you get really excited, the voice just naturally inflects upwards. And when you're angry or joyful, except most of us, North Americans, live within a very narrow range in our emotional context, and so most of us are kind of down in this range. And the ones that get this way, we sort of say, well, I'm going to stay away from you. You're a little too volatile for me. But nevertheless, if you're going to want to have full access to your voice, you need all of those ranges. So here's another way that you can get to it. You'll find this exercise on your sheets. Say the low range and the lower middle range, one right after the other. I'll demonstrate, then I'll have you do it. Shaw, 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 and then shaw, and just glide between them. Okay? Try it. Low. Shaw, 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 glide. Shaw. All of you were successful doing that, and you could feel there was a transition going on, wasn't there? There was a point where it was here, and another point where it was there. But the transition was smooth, was it not? That's what you would want in a singing environment. You want to keep that smoothness as you transition quite naturally. Now, the next drill is shaw, shaw, shaw. Join me. Shaw, 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 shaw. Now glide. Shaw. And once again, you felt a subtle transition between the bottom note and the top note. But still, it was a smooth transition, was it not? And so, therefore, you'd have no stress going between those. Now go from this one to the bottom one. Shaw, shaw, not gliding. Shaw. Hold on, let me establish pitch for you. Shaw, 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 glide, shaw. Bravo, very good. Did you feel the transitions go by? And you know, just like in an automatic transmission, you never worry about it until it doesn't change. You know what I mean? You start out, it goes, and about that time you're ready to get on the freeway. Instead, you go, At that point, you think, I better pull off. I'm going to drop my transmission on. But unless that thing happens, you never think about your transmission changing. It just shifts itself based upon internal pressures that are built into it. And the same thing should happen in your singing. Okay, now here's the top one. Shaw, 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 shaw. Good for you. Shaw, shaw. Now glide. Shaw. So a few minutes ago you couldn't do that, and now you're doing it. It was in a place that you weren't used to experimenting with, and you just sort of, through imitation, just sort of found it. It's kind of a novel little sensation, isn't it? It doesn't make you any less a man. Yeah.
Now, when I did that on the high note, I felt kind of a tightness in here.
That's not a good idea. Now that we found the range, we're going to go back to the game that I had you do just a few moments ago. Was how do you find that place and that place without changing your rib, the intensity at your rib rim? That becomes much more of an interesting conversation. So here we go. We're at that high one. Shaw! Now, as you did it go, If it did, then you're not getting it as well as you want. So, shaw! Wait. Shaw! Let me demonstrate. Shaw! But from the same constant place with your breath. Go. Now, let me come back over here. Were you any more successful that time?
I think so.
I believe you probably were, because if you allow for that subglottic pressure to increase, to bow the vocal folds, then all of the musculature at the base of the tongue, in the jaw, the back of the neck, feel like they have to stiffen down against that pressure that's coming from underneath. And so all of a sudden you find yourself tight in the back of your neck, stiff in your jaw, your tongue is stiff right in through here, it gets really tight. And all of those things stand to inhibit the natural patterns. You noticed, every one of you, how quickly and easily you could transition from very high to very low. We don't have a pitch pipe here, but you have already sung the highest notes that you'll find in the traditional singing calls and lower than the lowest notes that you'll find in traditional singing calls. All of you did that. What an interesting and novel notion. And how does it happen? It happens by decompressing here right in your throat. The little fricative W, the positive pressure things that I've talked to you about in terms of the basics, and we did a little bit in the intermediate yesterday, are strategies that you can do to get there. You can also use that little chewing mechanism to release the tensions in this area. You can go Yum 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 yum. And you'll notice you just go all the way through the whole range, and your body just becomes accustomed to it. It's not hard, except it's hard in your head. Don't you know what I mean? You see something, you got this phobia about a certain call that you've tried it 100 times in the past, and you crash on it every single time. You carry history as you go into that call, and all of a sudden, what was so easy right now in this group becomes really difficult when you're all by your little lonesome self. Now, if I were to go around individually, those great successes that you've been having would become more costly to own, because you'd be by yourself, and the self-consciousness that goes with a solo moment when you're among your peers would cause you to get stiff, and as you get stiff, you're no longer free to go where you want to go, and it becomes self-defeating. So there is as much going on here in your heads as there is in your body. Remember, your body only does that which your mind tells it to do. Sometimes the mind has a kind of an automatic loop where you get a response without really consciously thinking about it, but somewhere along the way there was a pattern set of anxiety or stiffness, and you have to catch that pattern, reroute it into a success mode that says, I can sing high notes, I can sing low notes, no sweat. And then you have to buy into it. And the easier, the sooner you buy into it, the sooner you succeed. And there really isn't any simple way around that. Having success at it gives you confidence, but it has to start with the possibility thinking, I've just done that in this environment, I can do that in another environment to overcome it. Now, before I go along to the next segment, let me ask you if there are any questions about what we've been doing. Okay, there are drills on your sheets of paper, the Shaw exercise, the glides back and forth, they're part of it. The next thing that I'd like to do is I need a volunteer, a fellow preferably. Let me get a fellow. No, it's okay, come on up. No, it's all right, come on. I need somebody, would you hold the microphone? Okay, so Patty, would you put your hands up and touch mine? Okay, now put your hands back by your shoulders and push over toward my shoulders. Good. And now I'll push back toward you. Now push with more vigor. Yeah, this is sort of gender specific just because of the volume of my body versus the volume of your body. But this task that's going on here is the same task. Push gently toward me, just gently. And you'll notice that I meet you with a gentle resistance. And the real task is that our hands stay together. Now increase the intensity of your delivery, and you'll notice that I meet you with about an equal intensity, but still allowing it to happen. Intensify more. And now you're doing something that you couldn't do a minute ago because you're just doing it incrementally, right? Yeah. Now, up the ante one more time. Very good. She has more strengths than she saw. Now up the ante. And that's, now I'm purposely not letting you succeed for two reasons. When you're trying to go louder and softer, it's a question of intensity. It's the same task, right? So if what Patty represents are the muscles of support that are trying to increase the volume, and I represent the muscles of resistance against it, right? So push toward me, and we're successful. The two things that you don't want to do when you're trying to learn how to sing louder and softer is this, push, where the muscles, one set of muscles stiffens and cancels out the success. And here's the other thing that you don't want to have happen. With vigor, push. You don't want to disconnect. And those two things, thank you, Patty, those two things are the boundaries that you need to stay inside. So let's see, what tune shall we sing? You Are My Sunshine? Everybody know that one? Okay, so sing that. Actually, I need a single soul to be the guinea pig. Can I call on you to help? Okay, you got the tune in your head? I want you to sing it just the first phrase, just in a comfortable volume.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
That's really good. Now, the same phrase, I want you to sing it as loudly as you can with one boundary. And with one boundary. And that boundary is that you can't lock any muscles. Because often people will try to get that extra volume by locking down and then pushing against that lock. And you've got to maintain equilibrium. So here you go. Your loudest in balance.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
Okay, let's say that hollering at a football game represents 100% of vocal energy. You go way beyond where you ought to. It actually hurts when you scream at a football game. So if that's 100% of vocal energy, what was that?
That was about 60.
Okay, can you go to 80? This is all subjective, right? He's playing the game inside of himself. He knows he's gone too far. When his breathing locks up, he gets stiff here, or he gets stiff here, or stiff here. Mm-hmm. But he wants to go as far in that direction as he can, short of locking up. Go.
Change pitch when I get a little bit.
Okay.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
Very good. That came closer to 75 or 80%, didn't it? Mm-hmm. Intuitively, you sort of knew where the boundaries were.
Yeah.
Okay, now, how quiet can you do that? Same pitch level, And here's where the boundaries are defined by either you get really stiff because you're trying to starve it down, or it turns breathy. You drop below that threshold of efficient energy. Keeping that balance, how quietly can you sing?
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
Yeah, that was
Did I
hard,
was right?
wasn't it?
Yes.
You were right on the boundary,
Mhm.
just ready to turn breathy, but just short of it, right?
Yes.
Go again, just to confirm.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine.
When you did that, it was safe,
Mhm.
but it was still really quiet. So if whispering is 10%, what was that?
Maybe about 20-25%.
Okay, so all of you have that capability within you. Maybe not to the extremes that Steve did, but all of you have boundaries within which you can play. And the boundaries are defined by the stiffnesses that occur in your body. If you're in your efforts to try to be powerful, you lock up your body, then you've gone too far, and you have no more control of yourself. If in your efforts to go quiet, you squeeze down your throat, or you decrease your breath energy till it becomes diffused and non-vigorous singing, then you're dead. If you see markings in music, how many of you read music or have been around music? You know the markings: forte, double forte, mezzo piano, piano. Those are arbitrary indications of relative loudness and softness. I like so much better the concept that you sing at 25% energy, 40% energy, 50% energy, 60% energy, because it's in relationship to your own skills, not to some sort of arbitrary mark on the page. And you know where your boundaries are. And if I'm going as loud as I can and still make my voice beautiful, I'm going as quiet as I can and make my voice beautiful. And if you only have the difference between 60% and 40%, you still have 20% gradation that you can play. And if you've got 60% of gradation, you've got more variety that's available to you, and therefore more different vocal colors. When Steve was singing at his loudest, it was a particular vigorous, strong sort of primary color. And when he got into the quiet, it was much more subtle and subdued and gentle. And if he were to kind of graduate himself subtly from the quietest to the loudest, not only would the dynamics change, but the quality of Steve's voice would change. And then as you're going along in your own quest for what's the right sound for each individual call, you can play that back and forth and say, this call is sort of in that medium loud range. This one is really on the loud side. This one is on the more sentimental or tender or intimate side. And you no longer are saying loud, soft. You're saying qualities of voice that describe that. So now I want to have all of you do what I'd asked Steve to do. Within your own boundaries, I want you to sing. I'm going to start on this pitch. You, that's our starting pitch. I want you to sing this just in your comfortable middle range, but with the kind of balance that you have been practicing since you've been here. Go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. I'll stop you that far. I wanted you to have to go up over that little mountain of that pitch, because if you're going to check yourself, you want to make sure that you don't ever lock up. You make me happy. I'm dead. I lock myself up. I stay balanced. I know intuitively where that balance is. You make me happy when life is skies are gray. Yeah, so all of a sudden, you play the boundaries. You know where your limits are. You know when you're going to lock up. You also know where you can stay in coordination. Sometimes it's from over-singing. Sometimes it's from under-singing. But you know where the boundaries are, and you just stay on that threshold of energy all the way through. Okay, well done. Thank you very much for that. That's kind of our starting place. Do the same thing again at your highest volume, short of that stiffening process. Go. You are my sunshine. Wait. No, we're gonna start again. You are my sunshine. Is that okay? Is that okay?
We're ready.
Go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. That's enough. Now, you noticed, not this time, but we'll do that in a minute. I just wanted to make a comment. As you feel inside your body, was there stiffness? Because when you get stiffness in your body, the tone will start to turn edgy and strident. When you get locked down, that's where you don't want to go, because that creates a sound that you don't really want to create. It says, I'm upset, I'm tense, I'm nervous, I'm angry. You don't mean to say that. You just have sung too far. So as you're looking for those boundaries, if you locked up this time past, stay short of that just by a margin. Here we go, and then we'll climb the mountain. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. And all of you gentlemen should have felt when you got to happy, your voice go whoop. And that's just that lift in that transmission, that if you're not knowing about it, you think, oh, I just screwed up, I just made a mistake. When in actual fact, that was exactly what should be happening. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Into overdrive, and away it went. Okay, could you feel the vigor with which your whole body was involved in that activity? You could feel the vibrations down into your body. It is. It's a whole body kind of sensation. I want you to do the same thing as quietly as you can and still on that energy threshold. Okay, so here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. I'm going to ask you to go back, and the boundary for that minimum threshold is that there's no breathiness in the sound. So you don't want, you are my sunshine, you are my, excuse me, you are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You hear the whole voice is there, it's just more gently engaged. And lots of people go quiet by making their voices breathy. And as soon as they lose the core in the sound, then they lose the vitality, and it becomes flaccid singing. It becomes uninspiring. So here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray. Now, wasn't it interesting how easy that mountain was to climb that time? Because when you're singing in that more gentle connection, you're already well connected to the light voice. And you're moving up into the range where the light voice is at its best. When you're singing with greater power, you're more connected to the heavier mechanism, and therefore the transition is more remarkable. I only make that comment so that when those things occur, you won't be unsettled by them.
I felt like I was so quiet nobody could even hear me. I was wondering if people aren't trying to sing quietly enough, or I'm doing the wrong thing.
No, I think everybody did well. I could hear. I couldn't pick your voice out individually, but I'll do it this time. We're going to do it again. We're going to do it, and this time I'm just going to patrol the perimeter. Here we go. Well, I don't think you are, because you can feel inside yourself when your voice is functioning, when it stays in balance with itself. It's very intuitive. It's not intellectual at all. It's very intuitive. And I want to encourage you and empower you to trust your intuitions in this regard. So here we go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You're doing that. See how much, if you can go quieter and still. You make me happy. There you are. When skies are gray, you'll never know, dear, how much I love you. Please don't take my sunshine away. Yeah, now the next thing that I want you to do, we're going to sing the whole song. And for each phrase that we sing, I'm going to call a different percentage of energy. It will just be arbitrary, but it's in relationship to your highs and your lows, not in relationship to the highs and lows of your neighbor. Okay, so we're going to start. 80% is like fortissimo. 70% is forte. 60% is mezzo forte, sort of loud, medium loud. Medium quiet is 50%. Think about that. Medium quiet is 50% vocal energy. 40% is quiet, and 30% is really quiet. Okay? So those are the games that you're playing in relationship to your own skill levels. We're going to start at 50%. That's calibrated intuitively in your own body. Here you go. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. 60%. You make me happy when skies are gray. 70%. 70. You'll never know, dear, how much I love you. 40%. Now, you see what happened when we did that? I got you building, 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 and then within the boundaries of your own skills, I just cut you back by about 30%, and it had such an emotional effect because it made it tender. It made it intimate and sentimental. And you can do that as long as you stay within the boundaries of your own skill sets. And that 40% will carry just as easily across a microphone as the 80% will. But if you drop down to where it's 20%, then there's no vitality in the tone and it won't carry. It won't carry effect. But if you were to sing that way, building energy, and then taking it away, the effect is overwhelming. The same thing is true if you're singing quiet, quiet, and then all of a sudden you surge up 20 or 30%. You don't have to go from the quietest you sing to the loudest that you sing to have that effect. Just subtle gradations in between. And the great thing about that is that you can control yourselves. You can control the boundaries of your own skill sets. And in your practicing, you're always pushing it, trying how loud can I get without locking up? How quiet can I get without locking up? And those frontiers will gradually expand and expand and expand until you have a wide range of colors and a wide palette of highs and lows in your skills. We were to have talked about harmonization today. I don't have any magic bullet to give you. There's some information on the handout that will describe to you the way that music is constructed, but that's all intellectual garbage. What really happens is that you sing another pitch and you keep experimenting until it starts to sound good. And there are lots of different ways that harmonizations take place. If you listen to bluegrass music at all, the kind of bluegrass music, the harmonies that they like are more acerbic and more strident than the harmonies in country western music. Or if you listen to the barbershop, that's yet again more sophisticated. If you listen to the Andrews Sisters or the Ames Brothers, that kind of harmony is yet again more subtle, rich, and warm than the others. And so you just kind of tinker along until you find something that matches the sound that you're looking for. And you don't even really think about it. If you think about it, you'll drive yourself crazy. You just play and let your ears tell you what you're supposed to do.
I like to harmonize, but every once in a while I hear a song that I just cannot harmonize to. Is that your experience?
It's certainly true. The songs that are the easiest to harmonize to are the ones that change chords infrequently, and they change in a predictable way. When chord changes are happening lots, in fact, excuse me, when the chords change rapidly, the notes that harmonize within that chord also change rapidly. And if you're going along in one key and it shifts to another key and then shifts away from that key quickly before you find your bearings, you can get kind of confused. Like, for example, You Are My Sunshine, the chords change very infrequently and they change very predictably, and they're easy to harmonize to. But you take another song that's New York, New York. It changes around so much that it's kind of hard to pick out. Are there other questions? Our session, I think, is coming to a close. Yes?
Whenever I try to harmonize with other callers, I always end up picking one of the other callers and do the same tone.
That's insecurity. I don't mean to be that straight, but the reality is that it takes a certain amount of courage to walk your own independent path, and there are risks associated with that. You set off on a journey, and you get yourself painted into a corner, and you sing something that's really sour. So you sang something that's really sour, and you get over it, and you learn from it. But But if you're inclined to be unsure of yourself, you'll always gravitate to a sound that somebody else is making, and until you'll get drawn back into the unison with the other caller.
So is it really a lack of practice?
Yes, it's lack of confidence.
Yeah. I tell you what I have done. I have taped myself and then played it back and did harmony with myself. That I can do.
That's right, because you don't really like to follow yourself.
Should we try for free?
I don't know, but yeah.
Isn't one of the trouble of trying to sing harmony with other callers is a lot of us do not sing the tune to begin with. We're singing harmony to the tune as we walk all over the tune and get things out of it.
That sometimes happens, and the most effective place for harmony to take place, of course, is in the chorus, where you're not giving choreography, but you're just given the standard tune. And at that point, most of the time, callers are back into the real pitches. In years past, I've heard callers who were insecure about going up into the high part of their range, finding alternate low notes and sort of patterning it on that lower tone, and that becomes difficult to harmonize too. So you're absolutely right. But all of you leaving here today know that you can sing anything that's out there. You can sing as high as you need to and as low. Oh, sorry.
One of the things that I see on a lot, unfortunately, if you tend to follow what's on the other side of the record, a lot of callers that are singing the songs, I wonder sometimes if they ever heard the original tune. And you listen to them and you go, what are you singing?
There's your harmony line.
No, that's a discord. Go back, especially a lot of the popular music. If you listen to the actual music, a lot of times you'll find the real harmonies in there, and then you can imitate or reproduce those actual harmonies in the real song. But some of the songs they just chew up, and you want to just throw the whole thing out, baby with the bathwater, because they've made such almost a mockery of the original song.
Let's come over here. Hang on.
Yeah, I've noticed there's some singing calls that you can just pick up right away. One I had particular problems with was Jezebel, and that's a tough song to sing. And I had to listen to the call side over and over and over and sing along with it. But
Buy the original record of Jezebel.
Those points.
You get what old Frank Lane
Yeah.
into that thing. And you're not going to hear that anything except when Frank Lane does it.
I was going to suggest that callers never, ever sing at the same time another caller is calling a call, like harmonizing or even in unison. Just the call, an actual call, no.
I support that entirely, because when the choreography is being given, the last thing you need is a distraction. The dancers deserve nothing but the directions to help them dance, from one person only. And then, when you come to the chorus, while they're doing a move, they're promenading, or whatever they're doing where they have some time to accomplish it, you just break out into harmony the way you want to. Now, when my parents grew up, they entertained themselves just by singing old tunes, old folk tunes, old hymns, and just harmonizing. That was their form of entertainment. And when I grew up, we'd take trips, and my parents would harmonize, and we'd harmonize. We'd just sing in the car. We didn't have a DVD to watch. We sang in the car, and we played the alphabet game, and we did all kinds of things to keep ourselves from going crazy. That thing has fallen out of practice. But I'd challenge each of you folks, as you get together, you can find remarkable pleasure and a sense of community if you will just get together and sing songs together and harmonize them. It doesn't have to be in the key that it was originally given. It can be in any key that it wants to be, where somebody's comfortable. Just sit and sing. And two things will happen. Your ability to match pitch, your ability to sing in harmony, both of those will increase. But apart from that, you'll keep alive in your own memories the tunes of your childhood, the tunes of your culture, and you'll celebrate them. I spent some time down in South America, and those folks celebrate their national songs. They love them. When I sing them, they sing along with me. They're just so proud of their national songs. The number of national songs from Canada and the United States is shrinking as we get overwhelmed with popular music, international popular music. And so many of the tunes that I learned as a child, nobody knows anymore. Same thing for y'all. If they die, it's because we let them die. And so if you're looking for things to socialize, even during you get together for your caller sessions, some of the fun things would be just to set a tune in motion and just sing it. Have sing-alongs, have printed sheets so that you remember the songs of your heritage, the patriotic songs, the religious songs, the cowboy songs. Who knows Davy Crockett? Yeah, exactly. That's actually part of a culture, But, yeah. Comment.
The problem of being a square dance caller is we all know the first 2 lines of the song, and the third line is always element left.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I think that we've... are there other questions that have to do with our topics today? Let me remind you that the roles from the days are here, and I'd welcome you to go and sign up. The practice of the progressive seminar is that if you came to Basic today, this year, you may have attended the other sessions, and you're welcome to have attended, but you get credit for attending Basic. If you attended Basic prior and you did Intermediate this year, sign up for Intermediate, even though you may have been in Basic as well and may have been here in the Advanced. The idea is that it's a progressive seminar so that you can have a year in between or 2 years in between to develop your skills so that the activities are meaningful to you. Yeah.
I don't know if this is important or relevant, but it's really important to me. If I put on a set of earphones and I'm listening to the music, and then I take the earphones and I set them on the desk, I can still hear the sound. The pitch in my mind just goes up. It sounds like when the really, really quiet sound, it just sounds much sharper. Like if I were to listen to the earphones and then take them off while still singing, I kind of feel like I'm out of tune. What do you have to counter that, or what is that principle?
The principle is that there are within every tone that we sing, there are a series of overtones, and the spectrum, it can be very wide. For every tone that's sung, there are 16 overtones that go over the cross multiple octaves before they're done. And the lower overtones are more powerful, and the weaker overtones, the higher overtones are weaker. But they're still there. And so when electronic systems capture the sound and reproduce it, the high frequencies are the ones that travel, and the low frequencies are the ones that come out and sort of die out. So when you're hearing that sound system over there, all that you're getting are the high frequencies, and so it sounds sharp to you. If you put the headphones back on, the lower frequencies are there to balance it, but they don't travel. And that's important. It's kind of what happens with a cell phone as well. Cell phones are calibrated not to capture the whole range of the human voice, but a limited range of the human voice. And yet we can still identify who it is that's talking to us. We get enough information from that limited spectrum of sound to be able to communicate successfully. But that issue of a train coming towards you and a train going away from you is the same principle. It has to do with sound pulses in the air. Coming toward you, they're a little faster. As they go away, they're further apart. And those play tricks with our ears.
I was just going to say, to me, it seems related to volume. Like if I sing really loud to match music that's loud, I feel like I'm going flat. And if I sing really quietly, there's like a sharpening, just with volume.
You may be true. That actually may be true, but it also may be perceptive, because when you sing fuller, you bring the heavier mechanism into play, and that makes a much richer spectrum from top to bottom. And if you're not accustomed to feeling that low frequency in your voice, it may make you feel as if you're singing below the pitch. Indeed, you might be, but in fact, you might not be. And we sing in the gentler, the lighter sounds. You emphasize the lighter mechanism in your voice, less lower frequencies, and so that also can give you a sense of singing sharp.
A lot of times, if you go through actual vocal lessons, you will see exactly what you're saying. That does happen. You do go sharp or you go flat when you go to those different ranges. And actual vocal training the teachers will force you to stay at that vocal level, and you'll see electronic. A lot of times, you'll have electronic monitors that will keep you on pitch to teach you that as you as you increase your volume, you will see that pitch waver, and sometimes it'll go up and down. And it's training. It's all training. It's if you really want to get your voice good for singing, then you need to be able to see where those pitches are and how your pitches are varying with the amount of air that you're using, the musculature that you're using, your posture, all the things we've been talking about for the last 2 days is important. And monitoring it and having somebody else sit by and say, "Ooh, you went sour," and that even happens to me sometimes. My wife will go, "Ah, that hurt." So it brings me back to reality that I'm not perfect.
Always tell them what's planned.
Okay. Any other issues that we need to talk about? If not, thank you very much for being here. And since many of you are here for the third time, I won't see you anymore, but those of you that are coming up through the system, you can come back.